All right, hi everybody, and welcome to our review of Grammar 6.2 from your textbook, which covers the present progressive tense. Let's get going. In both Spanish and English, this tense always consists of two elements. The first one is a conjugated to be verb, and the second is always a gerund. In English, our only to be verb, we only have one, conjugates this way in the present tense. I am, you are, he, she, is, we are, you are, they are. We know this. And in English, all our gerunds end in ing. So the sentences I am walking and you are reading are examples of the use of the present progressive tense in English. Okay? You can see your to be verb right here, if I would just highlight it correctly, are, and you can see your gerund, reading, here. Same thing here, to be verb am, conjugated, and gerund, walking. Gerunds in English end in ing. All right. In Spanish, the same two elements make up the present progressive tense. They're always, first, a present tense conjugated form of the to-be verb estar. A few things about estar. Please remember that the yo form of estar in the present tense is estoy. This is an irregular verb. And secondly, please use accent marks where they are required. That's on the tu form, estás, the third person singular form, está, and the third person plural form, están. And also remember kindly that the nosotros form, estamos, has no accent mark. So that's our to be verb. And then, of course, we make a gerund, otherwise known as a present participle, with a second verb. In Spanish, gerunds always end in NDO. So our English gerunds end in ing. Spanish gerunds always end in NDO. When you're working with the present progressive tense, then, if you find yourself writing a second word that does not end in NDO, you need to stop yourself because you're doing it wrong. Okay, this is especially crucial in the upcoming midterm exam. So let's talk about basic gerund formation in Spanish. With a few exceptions, which we'll see in a minute, it is very, very simple. To make the gerund of an AR verb, first, of course, you derive the stem by removing the AR infinitive ending. You leave that stem alone always. Leave it alone. And to that stem, you add ANDO. Okay? That's it. That's all you do to make the gerund of an AR verb. Let's look at some examples. So we have hablar. We remove the AR infinitive ending. That gives us our stem, HABL. To that stem, we add the gerund ending ANDO, hablando. It's the gerund of hablar. And let's look at cerrar, right? We remove the AR infinitive ending. That gives us our stem, CERR. To that, we add our gerund ending ando, and we get cerrando, cerrando. All right. And finally, almorzar. So we remove the AR infinitive ending. That gives us our stem, ALMORZ. To that stem, which we do not change or alter in any way, we add the gerund ending ANDO, and that gives us almorzando. Simple, so simple. Let's talk about some more basic gerund formation in Spanish. We're going to talk now about gerunds of ER verbs whose stems do not end in vowels. That's a really important distinction for ER verbs, okay? So, again, exact same process. We derive the stem by removing the ER infinitive ending. We leave the stem alone. And then we add IENDO. Okay, not ANDO. These are not AR verbs. IENDO to the stem. That's it. Let's look at it. So we have comer. Derive the stem by removing the ER infinitive ending. There's our stem, COM. To that, add the IENDO, gerund ending, and that gives us comiendo, comiendo. Same thing with volver, right? Derive the stem by removing the ER infinitive ending. Our stem is VOLV. To that, we add the IENDO, gerund ending, and that's volviendo. Volviendo is the gerund of volver. Finally, another example with encender. Again, derive the stem by removing the ER infinitive ending. To that stem, EN-CEND, which we do not change under any circumstance, we add the IEND. Whoa, we highlight a bunch of stuff we should not highlight. We add the gerund ending IENDO, and that gives us encendiendo. Encendiendo, the gerund of encender. Simple. All right, so more basic gerund formation in Spanish. Please pay close attention to this. Now we're going to talk about the gerunds of IR verbs, but only for verbs who, first of all, have stems that do not end in vowels, and for verbs that IR verbs that do not stem change in the present tense. Okay? Those are two caveats here. For all IR verbs of this type, which is quite a significant number of IR verbs, you just do the same thing. Remove the stem. You derive the stem. Don't remove the stem. It's a bad idea. Derive the stem by removing the IR infinitive ending. Leave the stem alone. Add IENDO to that stem, and that's it. You are done. So let's look at this. We have escribir. We derive our stem by removing the IR infinitive ending. So here's our stem, ESCRIB. To that stem, we add our gerund ending, IENDO. Escribiendo is the gerund of escribir. Same thing with vivir. Derive our stem by removing the IR infinitive ending. There you have it, VIV. To that, we add our IENDO gerund ending, viviendo. That's it. So simple. And asistir, again, completely normal IR verb. Derive our stem by removing our IR infinitive ending. That gives us our stem, ASIST. And notice none of these stems end in vowels, right? This stem ends in the consonant T, this one in the consonant V, and this one in the consonant B. So anyway, here's our stem, ASIST, which is strangely hard to spell. To that, we add our IENDO gerund ending, and we get asistiendo, asistiendo, the gerund of asistir. All right, so before we move on to the more complicated gerunds, because they do exist, let's practice with the basic skills we just learned. Remember, we always start the present progressive by conjugating the verb estar in the present tense. The gerund comes after we do that. So if we want to give the present progressive of caminar for the subject, Raúl, and I just highlighted a bunch of stuff I didn't mean to, for the subject, Raúl, all right, here's what we do. First, we're going to conjugate estar to agree with that subject. Raúl is a singular noun. Our verb conjugates third person singular. Está. Done. All right, now we're going to make the gerund of caminar. So we do what we've been doing, right? First, we derive our stem by removing the AR infinitive ending. That gives us our stem, CAMIN. This is an AR verb, so we add our gerund ending, ANDO, and that gives us the correct gerund. Caminando, caminando. Altogether, Raúl está caminando. Our conjugated to be verb está and our gerund caminando, right? Got it? Good. All right, let's look over here. So we're going to deal with pensar, its present progressive form. And we're going to first, of course, conjugate estar to agree with the subject, tú. And that form is, as we well know, estás. Great. Now we're going to make a gerund. So the first thing we do for this AR verb is we remove the AR infinitive ending. That gives us our stem, PENS. We leave that stem alone. Do not do anything to it. To that stem, we add the gerund ending for AR verbs. That's ANDO. And altogether, we get pensando, pensando. See it right here? Pensando. And this means that our entire sentence then is tú estás pensando. Here's our conjugated to be verb, estás, and here is our gerund, pensando. Simple, right? More practice. Again, just a reminder, we always start by conjugating estar in the present tense. The gerund comes afterwards. So let's work with this with the present progressive using the verb correr. The subject we have here is yo, right? And so we're going to conjugate estar to agree with that first, and that gives us estoy. After that, we're going to make the gerund of correr. So we derive our stem by removing the ER infinitive ending, and that gives us our stem, CORR. This is an ER verb. That means our gerund ending is now IENDO. So stem plus gerund ending gives us gerund corriendo. And altogether, yo estoy corriendo is the correct way to work with the present progressive with this verb, right? Conjugated form of estar first, estoy, gerund corriendo second. Let's do it with entender. So first thing we're going to do is conjugate estar to agree with the subject nosotros. Of course, that's está. Oh my God, why is that? Hey guys, welcome to my edit screen. Yikes. Let's go back. As I said just a moment ago, man, I proof these. All right. There's no accent mark. I don't even know what I was thinking when I did that. Yikes. There's no accent mark on the A in estamos at all. So we're going to pretend all that didn't happen, and we're going to conjugate estar first to agree with nosotros, which of course is unaccented estamos. And now we're going to make the gerund of entender. So this is an ER verb. We remove the ER infinitive ending. That gives us our stem, E-N-T-E-N-D. To that, we add our gerund ending for ER verbs. That's I-E-N-D-O. And that gives us, altogether, the correct gerund, entendiendo, entendiendo. Then, there you go, entendiendo. So all together, we then have nosotros estamos entendiendo. And of course, I didn't accent it down here because I'm not an idiot. I'm really sorry about that error, you guys. So conjugated to be verb, estamos, gerund, entendiendo. Yes, yes. Let's look real quick at some IR verbs. Again, we conjugate estar in the present tense first. The gerund comes after. So the first thing we're going to do is conjugate estar to agree with the third person plural subject pronoun ustedes. That's están, which does carry an accent mark. Afterwards, we're going to make the gerund of escribir. Derive the stem by removing the IR infinitive ending. That gives us your stem, E-S-C-R-I-B. You can see it right here. To that, we add our gerund ending, I-E-N-D-O, and we get escribiendo, escribiendo, okay? Yes. So altogether, conjugated to be verb plus gerund gives us ustedes están escribiendo. This is correct. And since they give you the verb exigir, I don't know why, in your textbook, it's not that commonly used. We're going to make use of it in the present progressive tense. So the first thing, of course, we need to do is conjugate estar to agree with the singular subject noun mamá. And that is naturally está. Now we're going to make the gerund of exigir. Simple, 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 simple. Derive our stem by removing the IR infinitive ending. That gives us exigiendo, right? So here's our stem. Here's our gerund ending, I-E-N-D-O. And as I just said, exigiendo is the full gerund. All right. And that means that our full expression then would be mi mamá está exigiendo. Exigiendo. All right. Great. So let's talk about our first non-basic gerund group. This is ER and IR verbs whose stems end in vowels. Now, your book says that gerunds of this type are irregular, but that is a bunch of hooey. It's just not true. Your book drives me nuts with this stuff. It's not irregular. These gerunds have an extra step, but it is totally predictable. It's rule-driven, and it happens in every verb of this type when you make its gerund. It's not irregular. It's just different. It still follows a predictable process. Ugh, this book. All right. So we're going to make the gerund of caer. But of course, first, since we're actually working with the full present progressive tense, the first thing we're going to do is conjugate estar to agree with the subject yo, and that is, of course, estoy. All right, now it's gerund time. So we're going to make the gerund of caer. We derive the stem by removing the ER infinitive ending. And ding, 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 we realize we've got a stem that ends in a vowel. Now, normal procedure, right, would just be to take this stem and add our I-E-N-D-O gerund ending to it. That's the normal thing we do. But our gerund is not C-A-I-E-N-D-O. No, ma'ams and sirs. An unaccented I between two vowels always becomes the semi-consonant Y. Always. This is a rule in Spanish. It's not irregular. So it's not C-A-I-E-N-D-O. It's C-A-Y-E-N-D-O. Unaccented I between two vowels always becomes the semi-consonant Y. Always. So, cayendo. It sounds the same. The only thing is that what would have been an I has become a Y because of its location between two vowels. That's it. So the same thing is going to happen with oír. The first thing, of course, we're going to do is conjugate estar to agree with the subject tú. This is clearly estás, right? Now we're going to make the gerund of oír. So derive the stem by removing the IR infinitive ending. That leaves us with a stem that is a vowel, an O. And as soon as we see this, we think, oh, okay. So the normal thing to do would be to take this O and add our gerund ending IENDO to it. But again, our gerund is not these three vowels in sequence. It's not. What do we end up with when we try to write O-I-E-N-D-O? We end up with an unaccented I between two vowels. And what did I just say? An unaccented I between two vowels always becomes the semiconsonant Y. Always. And so this is tú estás oyendo. Again, it sounds identical. The difference is in spelling. The unaccented I has become a Y. This is a mandatory spelling change. You have to make it, okay? All right. Let's talk about then our second non-basic group of gerunds. That's IR verbs that stem change in the present tense. Your book also says that gerunds of these type are irregular, and that is absolute nonsense. It's nonsense. These gerunds, again, they have an extra step, but it's totally predictable, it's rule-driven, and it happens in every verb of this type when you make its gerund. It's not irregular. It's just different. God, I hate this textbook. All right. So here's what happens. If the IR verb stem changes either E to IE or E to I in the present tense, then when you make its gerund, the last vowel in the stem, which is going to be an E, has to change to an I before the gerund ending IENDO can be added, okay? And if the IR verb stem changes O to UE in the present tense, then when you make its gerund, the last vowel in the stem, which will be an O, has to become a U before the gerund ending IENDO can be added to the stem and the gerund completed, okay? So if the IR verb stem changes E to IE or E to I in the present tense, the last vowel in the stem, which will be an E, has to become an I, okay? If the IR verb stem changes O to UE in the present tense, when you are making the gerund, you change the last O in the stem to a U before you add the IENDO to that stem, okay, to make the gerund. It's not irregular. It's a predictable process. It repeats. It's just different. That's not irregularity. There are very, very few irregular present participles in Spanish, and we will see them on a later slide. We're only going to look at two of them. All right, so let's give this a go. We have the verb pedir, right? Pedir is an IR verb, and it does stem change in the present tense. Let's make the present progressive expression that includes this verb then. So first thing we're going to do is conjugate estar for the subject pronoun ella. And this is a third person singular subject pronoun. And so our form will be third person singular está. Now, we're going to make the gerund of pedir. So the first thing, our initial stem is PED, right? We just remove the IR infinitive ending. This is our initial stem, but we are not done, right? We need to change the E in this stem to an I because this IR verb stem changes. So the PED has to become PID. See that? Now, once that change is made, now we can add the IENDO gerund ending to this altered stem. And that gives us pidiendo with an I in the stem, not pediendo, that's not a word, pidiendo. And of course, the full expression would be ella está pidiendo. All right, let's see this with a verb that stem changes O to UE in the present tense. And again, this is an IR verb. This only happens with IR verbs, not with ER verbs, not with AR verbs. All right, so first thing we're going to do is conjugate estar to agree with the subject pronoun tú. Of course, that's estás. Now we're going to make the gerund of dormir. So our initial stem is DORM. We need to change that O to a U, not to a UE, to a U. All right? Because this IR verb stem changes in the present tense. So DORM has to become DURM, never DUERM when you're making a gerund. Never. Gerund formation is not conjugation. It's a different process. I know it involves stems and endings, but it's not the same. All right. So remember, the O in the stem of this IR verb becomes a U, right? Because this IR verb stem changes. Now to DURM, our altered stem, we can add the IENDO gerund ending, and that gives us durmiendo. Dormiendo with an O is never the gerund of dormir. Durmiendo with a U is this verb's gerund. And of course, here we have our conjugated form of estar, estás, and durmiendo. Okay, tú estás durmiendo is the correct present progressive expression with the verb dormir. All right. So to close, there are two verbs whose gerunds are actually irregular, and you must memorize them. The first one is the irregular gerund of the verb ir, which is yendo, Y-E-N-D-O. This is a fairly common gerund. It does get used, so please do memorize it. You cannot get it from going to derive the stem, add. You'll end up trying to tell me that IENDO is the gerund of ir, and it's not. It's YENDO. So please memorize that. Here's an example sentence, right? Este autobús está yendo hacia Miami. What? That is a sentence using the present progressive tense. Here is our conjugated form of estar. Here is the gerund of ir. It's a regular gerund, which is yendo or yendo when I don't put my Argentine-ness into it. All right. And then the irregular gerund of poder is pudiendo, P-U-D-I-E-N-D-O. This almost never gets used, though. It's really rare that it would be used in a language, so don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Those are two truly irregular gerunds. Most of the things the book tells you are irregular for gerunds are not irregular. They just follow a different process. Difference does not equal irregularity. Nope. All right. So some final considerations about the present progressive tense. First of all, in Spanish, we only use the present progressive for actions actually in progress at the current moment. So if I say estoy escribiendo, it means I'm writing right now. Okay, right this minute, I've got something in my hand, like a pen or a pencil, and I'm moving across paper, and or I am typing, right, on a keyboard, but I'm doing it right now. If I want to describe an action in progress over time, I cannot use the present progressive, even though it's going to sound like that when you are thinking in English. So an example of that, if I wanted to say I am writing, right? Here's the am and the writing, sounds like the present progressive, right? But let's read the rest of the sentence. I'm writing my dissertation this semester. This is an action in progress over time, over the course of the semester. This is not said with the present progressive tense in Spanish. It is not narrated by saying estoy escribiendo. That is not correct. Instead, the regular present tense would be used for this. Escribo la tesis doctoral este semestre. That is correct. We just use the regular present tense. So don't let it fool you. A lot of times when you think in English, and I know you think in English to generate Spanish, you're going to hear things that sound like they're the present progressive, but they don't talk about actions you're doing right at this moment, or anybody else is doing right at this moment. If it's not an action currently in progress, the present progressive tense cannot be used to narrate it in Spanish. Okay? And let's look at another fooler. The present progressive is also never, ever used for future actions. This is another common thing that sounds like the present progressive when you think in English and is never the present progressive in Spanish. So, for example, if I said, I'm eating lunch, and here you can see the am and the eating, right? So it looks like the present progressive. There's a to be verb, there's a gerund. But let's read the rest of the sentence. I'm eating lunch with a friend on Sunday. Today, as I make this, it's a Friday. Sunday is in the future. This future action cannot be expressed with the present progressive tense. We never use estoy almorzando to talk about this. Never. Yes, I know it sounds like it should be. No. This is why thinking in English and trying to work in Spanish very often here in Spanish too is going to lead you down a bad path where errors are made, right? Just think about it. Is the action in progress right now? If it's not, you cannot use the present progressive tense to narrate it in Spanish. End of story. So this future action, I'm eating lunch with a friend on Sunday, is of course narrated one of two ways in Spanish, either with the regular present tense, which is just fine for proximate future actions in Spanish, totally fine, or you can use the ir plus a plus infinitive construction that we already learned in Spanish 1 to express future actions. So the two options to express this correctly would be almuerzo con una amiga el domingo. I don't know why I almost changed Sunday to sábado, it's Saturday. Almuerzo con una amiga el domingo, or, and that's just the regular present to narrate this proximate future action. Or we can say, voy a almorzar con una amiga el domingo. That's the ir plus a plus infinitive. Here's conjugated ir. Here's our a. Here's our infinitive, right? And this is what we use to express future actions in Spanish. Fine. It's fine. But never, ever, estoy almorzando con una amiga el domingo. No, no, no. Present progressive tense can only be used for actions actually in progress at the present moment. Never for future actions and never for actions in progress over time, as we saw in this page. All right, I hope this helps you guys with the present progressive. And hasta pronto. Ciao.